Good afternoon. My name is June Tinsley. I'm Head of Communications with NCBI, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Peter Ryan, who is a service user of NCBI, but even more importantly, he is a Fine Gael councillor and also a Paralympian cyclist. So thanks very much, Peter, for joining us today.
No worries, June. Delighted to be on. Yeah, looking forward to it.
I hope you've had a nice sunshine down where you are for the weekend.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. It's the only thing that's making it bearable, really, isn't it? It's helping keeping the sanity anyway. So
it is indeed, definitely. So I suppose if we just kick off, if you want to kind of tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm a 29-year-old tip man. I am legally blind. I got a condition called Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy about 10 years ago. I suppose I'm lucky. Usually if you're doing an interview and you say an eye condition, no one has ever heard of it, but I think our target audience might be a bit more invested. So essentially, yeah, it's a hereditary condition, but it takes your central vision. So that came about when I was 20, or just turning 20. And yeah, like I was living like what I like to call a perfectly beautiful, simple, normal life up to that point. Like, so like, I suppose I talk and I try and advocate on behalf of people in the visually impaired world now for the last, be it politics, be it ever before that I was doing it as well. But like I had to learn a whole new way of life. And yeah, over the space of about 14 months, I started losing 90% of my vision. So there was a lot of downs for a couple of years, and thankfully, look, I got things back together, and yeah, we're pushing on and driving on, really.
And in terms of like 14 months, that's a very short period of time to go from one world that you were familiar with to another one where you weren't familiar with. And I suppose, as you say, there were some good days and bad days during that 14 months, but no doubt it affected all aspects of your life.
Oh, 100%. Like it's like what people don't realize, and like I said, I suppose I'm speaking to the converted here with this audience, but hopefully there'll be family members listening, and a wider spectrum than just the visually impaired community. But like it was my whole way of life. Like I was 19, I just left school. I was driving a car, working in construction. I was quite sporty even back then. I was making tip teams from the age of under 14. I was soccer mad. I was getting international soccer trials when I was 15. That was just who I was, like, and you take everything for granted because that's how you are at that age, and there's no 5-year plans. And yeah, look, when it happened, although it was all very innocuous at the start, I just started making a few mistakes on the hurling field, thought I needed contact lenses. Like the whole thing just snowballed, and I was like a zombie going through it. And like I know we talk about the 14 months because that's the window that I lost my eyesight for, but it was nearer to a 3-year period, if not more, and still have my ups and downs. But like complete culture shock, whole like literally everything that I knew about myself was gone and being taken away. And with that then came hopes and ambitions and the fear and the unknown and the isolation. And I don't know where you want me to stop there, but it touches every aspect of your life. Like I've equated it to some form of grief. Like it's kind of a part of me died, and the person I thought I was going away and drifting away in front of you, that's a hard piece. Like kind of sometimes I lament thinking like, would it have been better if I just got a bang of a head off a hurley or something and lost my sight in one day? And it was just, whereas I was kind of had this mad, frustrating 14 months of bit by bit, and you kind of retrain how to do one thing, and then a month later your sight gets worse, and then you have to navigate a new way. And it was complete mental torture for about 3 years. But like I said, there's going to be an upside to the story as well, hopefully.
I suppose the upside comes with just acknowledging that it takes a bit of time to get there, and that journey is different for every single person who experiences sight loss.
That's the thing, and it is. You walked out of the hospital and you got your diagnosis, and there's not a pamphlet on how to be blind by. It's very much a mixture of what sits well at me versus what's my independence look like. That 10% vision I have, I try and utilize that to the absolute maximum. Like there's plus and minuses to that. You can turn yourself into an island trying to be too independent. There's a whole new just what sits well with you and what makes you happy in your own skin. And that was a journey to say the least. But yeah, and like thrown in there, and I make no bones about it, there was an awful lot of counselling involved and talking about it, and that whole acceptance piece is huge, and it's not to be ignored, you know. So there is a lot of hurt in that process, and it needs to be acknowledged if you're going to move on, or at least I'm a believer in that anyway. So yeah.
Well, as you rightly say, is you're going from literally the person you knew you were to the person you are now. There is a journey and a process, and it is akin to a grief process that has to be gone through. So I'm sure many listeners can relate to that.
And the thing about it is as well, like just kind of a side note to that, is it's more than just you going through it. And probably early doors, I definitely put up all the fronts, and I suppose when it comes to writing the book on this stuff, June, I did all the wrong things, and like I put up the biggest front for so long and kind of pretended that it was okay, and like living in my head and not explaining to people that you're frightened or that you're scared or whatever. But like meanwhile, I was thinking, if I do these things and just pretend I'm okay, then the family is okay, because you can see that they're hurting as well, and there's probably a bit of bitterness there, saying, look, this is my shit. You don't need to cry, because, and then that turned into, if I don't cry, they're not allowed to cry. And
Yeah, exactly.
it just became a warped kind of mentality of pretending you're okay, but like no one wins doing that, because the people that love you only want you to be okay. So fronting up doesn't, like there is a time when you have to move on, but there's a time when you have to stop and dwell and deal with it and actually process the whole thing. And yeah, it took me a while to acknowledge that.
Yeah, so otherwise it will catch up on you. It really will.
It definitely did.
And tell us, how did you get connected with NCBI, and what kind of service did you receive?
Like that, like the service has always been brilliant. There's no two ways about that. But I was hesitant. I didn't relate to the words that were being brandished around. Like I was a cool young 19-year-old without a care in the world, and blind, visually impaired, disability. Those words, like, they freaked me out. Like I didn't identify with any of that. So I was probably being told by family members, like they were obviously the ones doing the research, and I was just like I said, I was a bit of a zombie for a few months, like just not acknowledging, not realizing, and I was making life a lot harder on myself. And then the family just said, you have to meet some of these people, blah blah. And like in my head, like the only blind person I knew was the local blind lad with the dog, and you know, and like I had that real struggle with, who am I, what is this, and on that side of it. And then like most fears, like they come out of projecting and, you know, just thinking in your head. And like as soon as I went in the doors, it was the most welcoming place in the world, and it actually helped me in the sense that there's a bit of a community here, and you're not the only one. And the isolation piece, it definitely helped with that. And look at the service, it was the whole spectrum in it, like from even just finding out about the practicalities to equipment to the phones to whatever. Like there was someone at the end of a phone just to help, and that's ultimately, like, if you can encapsulate what you get, that's it. Like you just have someone to sound things out. And like I said, there was definitely a nice community piece to going down, and you might be doing a few days where you're meeting people that are visually impaired and realizing, look, life goes on and you're not the only one in this boat.
And there's reassurance in that as well, of course. To have that kind of peer support and people who've gone through the same thing you have gone through, or are going through it as well.
I definitely think so, and it doesn't always have to be the heavy. Like sometimes it's nice to laugh with someone that gets it, or, you know, some of the stupid things we do in the visually impaired world just to make life a bit more normal. And there's not many in the world that actually get it, or, you know, they might sympathize but can't empathize. And even the counselling I was getting, like it wasn't probably until that I met a visually impaired counsellor or a blind counsellor, and I think half of that was just the camaraderie and the meeting someone successful that's, you know, getting on with it, and that there is life again. And yeah, it was there's an awful lot to it, an awful lot. But isolation is huge, I think, when you're going through anything. So once you can get over that barrier,
True.
Yeah.
And tell us, how did you get involved in politics?
Politics came about more recently. Like, so I got elected last May to county council here in Tipperary. And look, like I said, there was that 3-year block where I was going through my own stuff, and then I started reinventing myself. And one of the things that came out was a whole new lease of life. And I spoke earlier about like a lack of appreciation, and I suppose the political journey like goes back to me fixing myself as a person and realizing who I am and strengths and weaknesses. And I suppose I'd been doing a lot of socially conscious stuff here for the last maybe 6-7 years, and pushing on and enjoying life. And that could be fundraising for different charities, it could have been speaking in local schools, talking about life, the ups and downs, resilience, whatever. Like, but I suppose I had built up a bit of a cachet here locally where people are like just seeing me as doing a bit of good in the community. And so the offer actually came to me to see would I be interested in getting involved in politics. And like initially, straight up, I didn't think I was, like, and then I was kind of, because you had this picture of what is politics, and it's wheeling
Yeah.
in the in a smoky back room or something. But like, when I was actually breaking down what is the job, essentially, like, you're advocating for people and you're trying to help. And if I can distill the job down to just those two things, I'm always going to be happy in the role. And God knows there's times when I'm frustrated and whatever, but for the most part, I'm very, very happy that I actually did take the plunge and jump in. And like, it's adding layers to me as a person. And and it's just, like I said, I had this whole list of things that I thought I could never do, and I'm breaking down barriers all the time, like, and setting new goals and just trying things. And like I said, like, the appreciation and gratitude for life is back. And I just think with that, you need to push on and do things that make you a little bit frightened, but ultimately once you get over it, then you're so glad you took on that project or whatever. So it it came about randomly, but I don't regret it at the same time.
Maybe there's an element of fate to it as well.
Well, like, the skill set involved, like, as well, like, because like I said, I'm the biggest advocate for the visually impaired world, and we'll all say you can do anything, and that's great, like, to a point, but there is practicalities involved. I can't go back working in construction. I can't, or not in the way that I want to be. And so this, like I do have a skill set around, well, I'd like to think around communicating and just that empathy piece and wanting to help. So yeah, like, utilize my strengths. Like, sometimes when you have a disability, when you have anything wrong with you, it's not just a disability thing, but we all lean on the thing that's wrong with us. Or, like, it'd be very easy for me to say I can't do this because I'm visually impaired, and I can't do that because I'm visually, and then before you know it, you're sitting down and you're doing nothing. So, like, you don't know unless you try. And like, why not lean into my strengths and see where they take me? So yeah, that's.
Well, best of luck in that role, and I presume the debates in the county council will be quite similar to the episodes in the West Wing. Would that be fair to say?
Oh yeah, riveting, yeah. Well, honestly, like, it was such a learning curve for me. Like I said, well, I went in socially conscious and whatnot, and I had the things that I wanted to implement. It's a whole new trade and a new workplace, and you have to learn. And I probably give the first 9 months just learning, reading and learning. And like, I suppose you might have an element of imposter syndrome. You're sitting down beside a lad who's been there for 40 years, and you're thinking, like, is my point as relevant as what he's saying? And you kind of have to dismiss all that, and you soon grow into the role and realize that, like, everyone here has an opinion, and once I'm advocating on behalf of others, it's not strictly wrong. There's obviously a requirement. So yeah, it's not quite the cut and thrust of the West Wing, but look, I'm having my own fun in there at the same time.
True, and to be fair, the principles underpinning it are the same in terms of making sure there's a forum for opinions to be heard and shared, and to make the laws and policies going to be more representative of the community that they're to serve.
Oh, it's really interesting that way. Like, I suppose, like, I wasn't in there long, and I just started realizing, like, you start trying to figure out what is politics, and then you just realize it touches everything. So it's been a huge education. Like, so no, I'm enjoying it that way. Just I just don't know, would NBC or CNN get a series out of our meetings? That's the only thing. But it's good though. It's good. We're enjoying it.
You never know. You never know. And how are you finding the commitment to the chamber and all the work associated with being a Fine Gael councillor, with your passion for cycling and the grueling training that's involved if you're planning on heading off to the Paralympics?
Yeah, it was a big decision at the time, like, when I was getting into politics, and that, like, the people that were not anti me getting involved, like, but my near and dear council, and that was the the first question for everyone, like, how is it going to affect Tokyo? And like, I was always determined that if you want something enough, you'll make it work. But it was trying at times, and there was times when I felt I was being a really good cyclist, and times when I was being a really good counsellor, and trying to marry the two. It was a whole new work-life balance for me, and it was a change from, like, I had habits built up over 6 years that just had to go out the window and be far more efficient. And I thought I was efficient anyway. So yeah, it was a big work week, but I'm so glad I did it. Like, and I'm looking at my teammates now at the moment with COVID, and like they cycle and do nothing else, and and they're struggling now in a whole lot of aspects. So
Right.
I've always been a big believer in the work-life balance, and I didn't want to be just a cyclist. Like, I wanted to be doing more of myself. And
And how did you get involved in cycling? Obviously, your passion before that was GAA and soccer, as you mentioned earlier. So how did you get involved in cycling?
a combination of things, really. So kind of definitely culminated around a good series of counselling again. But it's kind of, you're looking at life and realizing, look, it's not over. We have to get back doing stuff. And there was a Paralympic Open Day back 2013ish, up in UCD, and I went up there. It was very, very innocuously wanting to get back into sport and getting over some of my hang-ups around the word disability or the word visually impaired or what have you. And I just wanted to get back a piece of my old life, I suppose, and stop ruling things out without trying it. Because I was sold on this notion that sport is gone, work is gone, this is gone, that's gone, and it was all the things that I used to do. And I always say, like, comparison is the thief of joy, and that was when I was picturing sport, all I was picturing was the dressing room with hurling or soccer or football, like. So I went up to this open day and just wanted to do something, and open mind, and there was no big plan, but I went and did a trial with the cycle, and just, it seemed a bit of fun and what have you. And there was a club, I suppose, on the practical end of things. There was a club after starting up in my local area about a year before. It was kind of around the upsurge of cycling, and nationally it was going well. And they were keen with whatever I was doing at the trial, and they said, look, you have a bit of potential here. Would you consider it? Blah blah blah. And I just jumped 2-footed in, and like I said, it wasn't to go to Rio or go to Tokyo. It was just to get a sweat up and fucking a few endorphins, and just just a bit of my old way of life. And thankfully, yeah, I haven't looked back, because the whole thing just kind of took on a life of its own then before I knew where I was.
And it is tandem cycling you're involved in, isn't it?
Yeah, tandem cycling, which is huge. And like I say, even going from a team sport to a solo sport like cycling, like I had no previous background in it, able-bodied. I didn't even have a bike as a young lad. Like I say, I lived near the hurling field across the road from the soccer field. I didn't have use for a bike. So it was it was a steep learning curve, but it kind of got thrust upon me, because there was no let's go to the Olympics. It was, let's go for a 40k cycle. That was all where my head was at. And I think after 6 or 7 months cycling, I won a national title, and that's when I got called up into the Irish squad. When I bet lads that were involved in the Irish team, and I wasn't. I was kind of the nobody on the scene. So that was kind of, people took a bit of notice then, and before I knew it, the Irish team were kind of putting the arm around me and saying, we can help you with this and help you with that. And yeah, that's kind of, so, like, I went from basically not cycling until I was in Rio in the Olympic Village 3.5 years later. So it's a cool little story.
It is. You're understandably, your head must have been in an absolute spin, going, God, how did this all happen so quickly? It's a huge accomplishment. It really is. And tell us about, obviously, with the Paralympics in Tokyo being deferred for another year. How's that affecting your kind of psychological training?
It's definitely tough. Like I was saying, like, looking at my teammates, they might be going through worse things, but it's hard, because like we're training anywhere between kind of 12 and 17 hours a week on the bike, then throwing your gym work, throwing a bit of physio, throwing, like, I had a 30-hour week sketched out just to do a training. And but underpinning all that is the why. Like, you'll get up at 6 to do a bike session, because you have a race in a month's time, or you're going to a World Cup qualifier in 3 weeks. And like, there's always a why to getting out of that warm bed. And it's like the rug is being pulled from underneath us, because we're like,
Yeah.
well, we don't know when we're racing again. We don't know when I'll meet the teammates, when we have a training camp, when any of that stuff. So it's been really hard. The motivation won't lie, like it's been tough to be like that disciplined pro athlete lifestyle. But at the same time, sport is one of the things that keeps me on an even keel. And like if I was to sketch out what does my perfect day look like, exercise is definitely a part of that. So like I'm lucky it's kind of a way of life for me now as well, rather than just training because I have a race. So like the intensity is knocked out of it, but sport is actually keeping me on an even keel. And I go out early, I do a bike session, I might do a run in the evening or something, just to, like I said, box off my day. I'm working from home all day, every day now. It's completely different way of life. So I'm using
Have
it.
have you been able to meet up with the person who's your tandem?
I have a stationary, I have a watt bike in the shed. So
Yeah.
like I would have been doing maybe 60-70% of my work in that shed on my own anyway. Because like the guy I race with is from Clontarf, I'm based in Thurles. We might
Okay.
only be able to, in his life, my life, we might only meet up once a week. Then maybe 3 times a week when we're coming into season and there's a bit more wriggle room. But no, that stuff, and even Sports Ireland have given us a directive now, like saying because of social distancing, we can't actually. So not to mind the 5 kilometer limits and that side of it, we can't actually train together because of that, unless we decide to live together and cocoon. So
Yeah.
it's imposing a real challenge on us, like, and the dynamic, and you're trying to keep the team spirits high and this, but there's no like, and hate to sound negative here, because like that's not what I like doing at all, but there's no major end in sight to those barriers without a vaccine. So that's very tough to take. We don't know when we're going to race again, essentially. But yet you're trying to keep the fitness up. So I've kind of taken on this mentality that, look, there's no point in absolutely like draining the mental reserve, trying to train hard when you don't know, you can't plan for your, like, all my training would always be like periodized and tapered to a certain event, but that's kind of open-ended now. So I'm just going to keep generically very fit,
That's
and
all you can do.
yeah, exactly, and not make any knee-jerk decisions, not do anything, just come out of this period refreshed, enjoying my bike, enjoying my exercise, and when it comes time to put down real structure, I'll be ready to go.
And hopefully your teammates too are in the same situation, that they're ready to go when the green light has been given. It's just a question of wondering when that green light will be given.
That's it, and there won't be a big window lead-in time. It's just going to be, the traps will be opened, and we'll go from no race to you have one in 3 weeks' time. And like most of my big races, it takes 16 weeks of prep to get ready for it. So it's not so you kind of need to have that base fitness very good and high, and just ready to roll whenever the traps open.
Yeah, it's true. It's an interesting to hear how the COVID pandemic has certainly affected you and many other Paralympians who are wanting to maintain physical fitness levels, but are just so unsure as to the landscape of when their team is either going to unite again, or when the next race will be in order to continue to prepare. It's a hard one to work out.
Yeah, and then like the other side, look, I know it's not the biggest problem in the world with all this, but like we're all selfish in our own little way, and this is big in my world. I was planning on retiring after Tokyo and just heading full time into the real world, I suppose. But look, we'll figure it out. It's not going to torment me too much, but it's I've done my dwelling over it now. I've just made my peace, and what'll be, it'll be.
And roll on 2021. That's all you can kind of to look forward to.
That's it.
And I suppose, Peter, is there any one piece of advice that you would give another person who has recently lost their sight?
Well, one piece of advice, like I've loads of advice, but I suppose to encapsulate, like, definitely, look, it's not over. That's a message that really needs to be understood, like, because we become prisoners of our own hate, and like doesn't matter what age, like you kind of have this blueprint, or people around you think everything's going to be different, and it will, but like not everything that has happened to me is for the worse. Like there's like, you know, if I'm having my more profound moments, I think I'm living a better life, as weird as that might be to say and whatnot, like, but really examine myself and who I was beforehand and different things, and I was carefree to the point of blasé, like. But whereas now I can have the bit between the teeth, and I've learned things about myself and life and my capabilities, and there's, you know, I'm doing things now that I'm sure I would never have done, and there's something cool in that, and the fact that I am as content as I am, and I'm like go around talking in the schools, talking in businesses, wherever the case may be, and not like everyone has a problem, and I suppose it took me a while to realize. Like, I kind of thought I was the only one in the world with a problem, and you realize every house in this country, something comes in the door of it, and it's your reaction that's going to define you. So look, if you're in the position where you've lost your sight, one, it's not over, and two, it's not terminal, and you kind of have to make the most of it. And thankfully, like, I am, and you know, I can't. And like that with this podcast or whatever, like, but if there's anyone in the visually impaired community that wants to reach out or contact or anything like that, I'm more than happy to talk or talk to family members, because you need to meet people and engage and meet those peers. And you know, I think that's definitely a good step. And
I suppose that's a very practical and reassuring message to send out to people. And I suppose just to conclude from the NCBI end, that our helpline is open Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and the number is 1850 33 43 53. And we'll obviously happily try and offer as much support right across the country as we can. I suppose, Peter, all I can say is thanks very much for sharing your story with us. I wish you the very best as your life as a councillor. I hope the West Wing TV programme is around the corner for you. And until then, continue with the training for the Paralympics. It sounds a huge goal that I hope you achieve with ease.
Hopefully now. But yeah, thanks a million for having me anyway. And yeah, keep the good work going. Like, I know it must be hard trying to be distant from people when they want to jump a service, but things like this definitely help. So I know I'm absolutely binging on podcasts at the moment, so hopefully now you've a few new members off the back of it, and people think about their next steps. So thanks a million.
Great, thank you very much.
Cool, cheers. All right,
thanks.